Hey there, we are Rob and Joanna Tigan. Welcome back to the Growing Home Together podcast. We've been married for over 30 years and we've parented our 5 kids through all the ages and stages. We're excited to share our passion for caring for the soul of your family with you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for the Growing Home Together podcast today. You know, our son started middle school this year, and we are seeing him grow in just all kinds of new ways. So he's grown into a new shoe size, and his appetite is getting bigger. He's grown a wider circle of friends, and he's definitely sleeping longer and longer hours on Saturday mornings. And his interest and his desire for screen time is growing bigger too.
Yes, and honestly, navigating our son's screen time isn't a new challenge that arrived when he started middle school. We've wondered for years how to set good boundaries so that screen time can be a blessing and not a burden as he grows. That's why we are glad to have our guest on our show today, Arlene Pellicane. And Arlene is the author of Screen Kids, 5 Skills Every Child Needs in a Tech-Driven World. She is here to help us all navigate screen time with our kids. Thank you so much, Arlene, for being with us today.
It's great being with you. And I know all your listeners are like, yes, they are understanding and nodding their heads as you're talking about your son.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, hey, Arlene, we were hoping that you could tell us a little bit about your family and how you became passionate about helping families to handle technology.
Yeah. So I was kind of that person that really wanted to get married and waited to get married, then got to, and then I wanted to have children, but we had struggles with infertility and then we had children. So it was kind of like, this is amazing. Like I finally have a husband and children, this kind of thing. And so I've always been passionate about enjoying that relationship, enjoying that family, seeing them as a gift and not as a burden. And technology is such a huge thing that is impacting the family. And I couldn't say that I was smart enough to figure it out myself. So I was approached by Moody Publishers with Dr. Gary Chapman. He wanted to write a book about technology because it's something he had seen more in his counseling, but he didn't have any, all his kids are adults and he wasn't in that world day to day. And at that time I had probably 3 kids under maybe 7. And so he said, you want to tackle this topic with me? And I'm like, sure. So that's kind of how that came about. So I wasn't even smart enough to think that way. But what we really found from looking at the topic, from decisions we had already made, that you don't have to get sucked into this technological vortex, but it is super easy to get sucked in. And if you don't have some solid footing first, that why really in place, so my husband is a realtor. And he remembers showing people houses, right? And they're with their kids and their teenagers. And the entire time, the kids are not even looking at the house. Like they're not looking at the neighborhood they might live in. They're not looking at the house they might live in, the room they might live in. They're just playing video games the whole day. And he came home and he was like, that is not going to be our children. Our kids were like super small at that time. And he said, when I drive them around to show them their new house or their new town or their new whatever, they're going to be looking around because they'll understand this is kind of a big deal. And that's really, kind of is a story of why we decided, what, this seems to not really be working. So we're going to do some things very differently. So we are not anti-tech. So don't worry. You may keep your technology. It's how you're listening to us. But we are very intentional in like which tech is the most addictive and when is it just too heavy of a bar to give a child something that is so like that we as adults struggle with, right? And why would we give that to our children? So we've withheld things like social media, video games, and actually owning a smartphone. And instead we make all sorts of adaptations and, we could get into that as much as you like.
That's great. Yeah, I love that this book is listed as a love language resource because it really is about, with all the stress in it as parents, It really is just about loving our kids well. And when I think about raising our now older kids, I don't remember ever having to put limits around Lego time or Polly Pocket time. If you remember Polly Pockets,
that's great.
We had millions of them, and or riding their bike or reading time. So why is it that the screens are so much tougher to put limits around for our kids?
That is such a good observation. right? Like that tells us something about it. So to realize that technology is not neutral, it's not that you don't have enough self-control or your child doesn't have enough self-control, to understand that from their own mouths. I love Tristan Harris. He used to work for Google. He's a design ethicist, and he just kind of now is on the other side because he realized we baked in all this addiction. Like we did this on purpose. We've tested this. We know this. We've A/B tested this ad nauseum to see like what's going to keep this kid online longer. So to realize, well, this is not a fair fight because behind that screen, there are 1,000, psychologists, brain scientists, behavioral, experts that are trying to figure out how can we keep this kid, this adult on this phone a little bit longer so that we can sell advertising, so we can keep their attention, so we can sell their data, etc. So to understand, wait a minute, this is actually programmed to keep me on. So notice, like, for instance, the TV of old that you would watch a show and then it'd be over and then you'd have to wait, a week to watch it again. Well, that's not how it is now. For Netflix, when they have post play, where it used to be where you'd watch an episode and you'd have to click to watch the next episode. Well, Reed Hastings, the CEO, said, you know what? My competition is sleep. And how am I going to beat sleep? And they introduced that, I'm going to make the next episode play. So the person now has to choose not to watch, their favorite show and not to see the cliffhanger. Like, who's going to be able to do this? So to understand that there are no stopping points in things like YouTube, Netflix, et cetera, social media, news, it is bottomless. And it is bottomless by design so that you do not stop. So to realize, wait a minute, this is actually made to keep me there. Another thing, it is unexpected rewards. We love unexpected rewards. We love, they did the research with the pigeons. How do they like to be rewarded in the 1970s? Predictable, peck, 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 you get a pellet. Or, my goodness, I've been pecking for 2 hours and finally got a pellet. Well, they pecked at that unpredictable, in that pattern. They did that 50% more. And we are just like them, that if we knew, if I post a picture, I'm going to get 2 likes every time, we'd be like, oh, well, that's not very exciting. I'm not going to do that anymore. Instagram will literally hold all the likes so that they can just dump them on you at one time. Whoa, I got 70 likes. That's amazing. And then you've got this nice rush of dopamine, of pleasure, and you want to come back. So to understand, wait a minute, this is created with no stopping points, with unexpected rewards, with artificial goal setting. We love to be productive. So in video games, you're leveling up, and this is very exciting. On social media, you're growing your followers, you're keeping a streak with a friend. All of these things are engineered. And I think as we understand that, it helps us. And then as we teach our kids, like show them, like, look at this. This is a paper newspaper. It has a beginning and an end. It's meant to look at so you are informed, and then you leave it. But look at this. Look at my online news feed. Look how it never ends. Look how it's dominated by these, terror producing headlines that I must look at all the time. And I think as our kids get older, the more they understand that business of keeping us hooked, that's going to help them in their lives.
Wow, that's tremendous. And wow, just right there, what a great conversation starter you've given us to just open up the dialogue and help our kids understand it isn't mom and dad just trying to kill the fun. Yes. There's some legitimate, things under the surface that we might not be aware of. So that's fantastic. And you had mentioned, it is just as difficult for us as parents to set boundaries. I mean, I was thinking about how just this week I've used my devices for work. I've gone searching for recipes for dinner. Yeah. I've used them to connect with family that lives far away. And just the other morning, I pulled up a joke on Rob's social media so that we could show it to our son before he got dropped off at the bus stop. I mean, it's just so woven into our day. Do you think that it's easy to kind of hold our kids to one standard with their screens, but another standard for ourselves? And is that even appropriate?
Yes, I think it is easy for us to do that because, it's like anything in life. You can see like, well, you are a very negative person, to someone else. And then you don't see at all that, well, I'm kind of a negative person too. So it's just, I think in our nature, it's so much easier to see it in someone else. And then we will think about our children in particular. We'll think, well, you're our children. We're supposed to help mold you and help you become a better person. So we better watch this media stuff, all the social media and this video games. But, I'm a full grown adult. My brain is formed. So I can just kind of do what I want. Plus, Plus, I'm the adult. I don't want you as a child telling me what to do because I'm the adult. And I think there is a humility that does need to come to say, like, all of us, search me, oh God, know my heart, create in me a clean heart. Like, Lord, it might be me. Maybe it's not my teenager. Maybe it's me that's turning to this because it feels important. Like mine is email. I'm just checking email all the time. Why do I need to do that? I really don't need to do that, but it makes me feel important. It gives me something to do. Maybe there's something exciting in there. Maybe there's a chore that I'm avoiding so that I check my email instead and it looks like work. So for us to examine ourselves as well, and maybe that is a good starting point to say, you know what, kids, you know what, teenagers, I'm finding that you are on your phone a lot, but you know what? I am on my phone a lot too. Why don't we have a challenge together that will, like, and whatever it is, maybe we'll skip social media, everyone, for 1 week, or maybe we'll say Thursday night is like our game night and none of us are going to go on our phones after dinner, whatever it is. And I think when you say confess to each other, it's funny, right? It says confess to one another and you will be healed. This can happen in a home too. Like they did a survey of 6,000 people, children around the world, and asked what their parents' most annoying habit was. And like 54% of them said using the phone too much. And 87% in Brazil said it was my parents using the phone. So I think you're right that we do hold a different standard, and that to have that change happen, maybe it's us. Maybe even if it started with us and we share what we're doing and not even talk to our kids for a week about it, but just share, hey, this is what mom's doing. This is what dad's doing. Like sometimes my husband will do a news fast and he'll tell the kids like, hey, I'm doing a news fast for a week, and just show them by example that you are also trying to control this.
Oh, that's a great idea. I think for me, I can struggle to be even objective about how much I really am on my devices. So if somebody wanted to start that process of kind of self-examination, is there any kind of tangible guideline you could give us to kind of assess our own usage?
Yeah, there is. Like, I'll give you two answers. One is just kind of think of it as a scale of casual, at risk, addicted. And this is like for parents and kids. Casual is like, hey, I log on to my Instagram. My kids play this video game. They don't look at it for several days. They don't even talk about it, think about it. It's not really a big deal in our lives. That's casual. Like, you're doing okay. At risk is like, oh, I've been doing this Instagram thing and I'm just finding like every day I've got to check in like a few times now. Or a kid saying, I know I'm supposed to just play the video game on the weekend, but everyone else does it throughout the week. Mom, could I have 2 more days? Dad, let me play like Tuesdays and Thursdays too. Then we know like, okay, this is at risk. We're kind of getting more interested in this. And then of course you're addicted is the, hey, mom, dad, could you listen? And you're like on your phone. Or the kid that's like, I don't want to go out. Like, I'll just stay home because I'd rather, be here with my video game or whatever. So it's stopping you from doing other behaviors that you usually do. So that scale changes. You might be casual 1 week and then you realize a month later, my word, we are now addicted. And then you just bring it back, just say, okay, wait, I need to come into a more casual relationship with this social media or with this video game. So you're kind of cycling through that. And, they're doing a study, and I think this works with adults too, but they're doing a study of 10,000 kids. And there are these 3 basic things that our grandmothers would have told us and been like, no, duh, a good night's sleep, an hour of exercise, and 2 hours or less of amusing screen time. So that if your child did that, your teenager did that, they would be miles ahead of most kids in the United States and even around the world right now. And so as adults, I think, you think about that 2 hours of amusing screen time, let's say, and that's it. It's kind of a lot every single day, considering all the other things we have to do. But let's say you're getting a lot more than that. That would be a good place to start. Like, okay, let me, in terms of like, amusing like TV and amusing videos and, social media scrolling, let me get that to 2 hours or less a day. I think that's a good place to start.
I hadn't thought to ask this, but as you were talking, I was wondering if there's people listening who might have, several kids in the home, and maybe you've got one kid on the lower end where it doesn't have high impact, but you've got another kid who, really seems to ramp up the stress and anxiety when they play. Do you have any thoughts on, Do you set
Yes.
kind of the same boundary for the whole family, or how? What's a good way to navigate that?
I really think that you have to look at every boy, girl, mom, dad separately because they're different. Because your 15-year-old might be able to handle something really well, but then your 19-year-old might just go crazy over something, and even though they're older and it seems like and maybe 19, that's too old, they're out of the house. So let's say they're 18, they're a senior, they're in your house, and that, they might be the one that needs the limit and not your 15-year-old. So I would not do it by age. I would do it by the individual and let them also know, let the kids know, you're not all in the same thing. Maybe you're not all baseball kids. You're not all basketball kids. You're not all ballet kids. You are different. And the same holds with technology of what you're able to handle and how your brains are wired and how your emotions are wired, et cetera. So I think it is good from the very beginning to be like, okay, you have to be at least this young to get this thing, whether it's a video game, social media, phone, whatever. Bill Gates waited till his kids were 14 before he gave them phones, and Bill Gates knows a little bit about technology. So, have that kind of base that, okay, you've got to be at least be this age, but being this age doesn't mean you're going to get all these things. We really want to tailor it to make sure it's best for you, so obviously your kids aren't going to be like, oh, great, what a good plan. They might say like, that's stupid and, whatever, but that's part of this parenting thing is sometimes you do things that are not well received, but in time, it'll really be good for your kids. And the thing is, you've got to fill their time with things they like. So it's not just like, okay, you're 14, but we're withholding this phone and video games because we know it's going to be really awful for you. Have a nice life. But instead, you're really trying to help them. Like, what do they really like? Maybe they really like a sport, or they really like art, or they want to volunteer somewhere, or they, so really try to listen and introduce them to a lot of interests so that they can have some kind of hobby in real life that pulls them. So it's not just that they didn't get to do something, but they have something different that pulls them. That really helped my kids through all these years where they haven't had social media and video games.
That's great. Something you explained really well in Screen Kids is how our family relationships are really affected or impacted by technology. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So you just think, when your kid leaves, like, let's say take a small child and they get dropped off at church. Would they miss you more as their parent, or would they miss their iPad more, right? Are they crying because you're saying goodbye to you, or they're crying because, oh my word, that I can't be with my iPad for 2 hours? And, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but the idea there is your child needs to be more attached to you than to a device. And when your child leaves for college, for them to be like, oh, I really miss my mom, not that like they would miss us more, let's say, than, oh, I didn't have access to social media or something for a day. That relationship needs to be there. And I think that when you all come together, like you watch a family movie night, that you're like, okay, we're going to all watch, a movie together. We're going to watch that horse cross that finish line and win the race. You know what I'm saying? We're going to cheer for this. That to me is a digital vegetable. It's something that is a good digital use of time, that you are coming together, that you are going to watch something together. You're going to make these memories together. And that's good. And that's kind of why we as parents are like, let's buy that because we're going to bond together. But in reality, in the day-to-day, what happens? Well, sister is, on a shopping site, and brother's playing a video game, and mom is looking up a recipe, and dad's checking his stock prices, and everyone is in these little silos, separated in the same room, but all doing different things. And you do that once in a while, and that's really not a big deal. That's kind of like letting off steam and no problem. But you do that every weeknight for 10 years, and what's happened? Like, we are no longer connected together. And in fact, the way we find our connection, it has to be through technology. Then it becomes like, oh, did you see this? And you're just sharing what you see in technology, but you're never sharing your personal life of who you are and discovering who the people are in your home. And so how do we get that back? Family meal time, make sure that's device free and really use that. And then, more times where people are unplugged, that they have to interact with each other because there's nothing else to do.
Sure. And what is a suggestion that you might have to help us unplug?
Yeah, so you could do, a digital Sabbath. So there was someone that I quoted in the book, William Powers, and he wrote a book called Hamlet's Blackberry. He and his wife and his son, teenage son, about the age of yours, they were very close, like a close family, but they were realizing every weekend we just kind of do our own thing. Like we just, everyone just kind of goes off and does their own thing. So they decided, okay, we're going to unplug the modem Friday night and we're going to plug it back in Monday morning. And as a thought of, we are going to figure out like other things we can do that are not computer related. And it was really hard. And for weeks they hated it. And they were like, this is stupid. And we should have never done this. But they said by about the 4th month of trying that. So notice, like sometimes you'll try things and they don't work right away and we just give up. But the 4th month, they were like, we started looking forward to the weekend because we knew, oh, okay, we can get offline. We're going to go hiking. We're going to go to these stores that we like. We're going to eat picnics, whatever it is that they enjoyed doing. And they actually looked forward to it. So, that is kind of extreme. Like if you went every weekend, but what if you went one weekend and you unplugged? What if there was a certain time of day, like a 9 p.m. or a 10 p.m. where the modem went off and everyone, didn't have access? And guess what? You'd all be forced to get a good night's sleep, which would really help the kids and teenagers today. So there are definitely things like that. And then I think the device outside of the bedroom, that's a very, very good boundary to put in.
Thank you. That's really helpful and practical. Yes, we are parenting a teenager and young adults right now and navigating all of the screen concerns with that. But then we also have a little grandson and a baby granddaughter. And so kind of looking at the now and even just in the next couple of years, are there any particular concerns with exposing little ones to technology before they're even of school age?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. And we do have that companion book, Grandparenting Screen Kids. And the answer is yes. Like the younger your child is, the more you must be like, we are listening to the beat of a different drummer. Like everyone's telling you, oh, this is the technological age. They're going to grow up with this technology. Go ahead and you see them, right? You see 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds holding a tablet in the shopping cart in the stores and all those things. And I just want to caution you so much that attachment, so that those years, especially from, birth to age 1, let's say, for sure, like no screen. So let them attach to you as a person, because if they don't attach to their mom or their dad in that window, they're really going to have trouble their entire life attaching to someone. So it's super important when they're young, even if they have older siblings, it's a great excuse to tell the older siblings, oh, the baby can't look at that. Like the baby, that's really bad for the baby, because then the baby's going to grow up and just want to be with a tablet. And we don't want that. We want the baby to talk to us. We want the baby to be able to talk to us. So let's put that away. So it's actually good then for the bigger kids too, because then you have this quote unquote excuse to say, yeah, let's not do that as much. Now the pediatrics, pediatricians, they say that if you're doing FaceTiming a baby, that's actually okay, because that's a real live person that is talking. So when you FaceTime even your 6-month-old, that's okay, because that's the only technology that's okay, because they will actually recognize you when they see you, and they will talk to you and you will talk back to them. So it's the passive viewing that's really bad, but they're really actually attaching to you. So that's actually the only good thing. And then as your kids are 2, 3, 4, 5, these are the prime ages for language development, and they are going to learn language not just by watching something, even if it is educational. It's going to be so much more educational if they're talking to you and you're listening and showing them cues, and then you're talking back. They're going to learn. It's way superior. So don't buy into that. Oh, they have to have this technology to learn language. They will learn language best when spoken to and when listened to. That's how they're going to excel. And then obviously in their bodies, to be able to learn and jump and run and skip, all those motor skills are very important. What motor skill is a child learning when they're on a tablet? They are learning how to sit still, and they're learning how to swipe. And those are two very limiting. So, they don't need those skills. Those are not necessary skills. So it's very important. I talked to a kindergarten teacher who literally said, these kids are coming into kindergarten. They do not know how to hold scissors because they've never held anything. They've only swiped. And we are spending the whole first couple weeks, not cutting things, but learning how to play, learning with Play-Doh, learning how to hold things so they could eventually get to hold scissors. So just be thinking wait a minute, my child needs these kind of skills. So yeah, but especially between birth and 5, it's really important to limit, like the more non-existent screens are, the better off your child will be.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'm just thinking of a book I read recently. I don't remember. Well, actually, I do remember. I think it's Craig Groeschel's book on A Battle for the Mind, and he was just talking about how easily our brains are formed, and even at young age. He uses an example of like if you give your kids food every time they hurt or are sad, as kind of a reward or a distraction. How then, even when you're older, if you're not thinking about it consciously, you can turn to food for comfort. And I think that's so true with screens too. If we can, not to make us worry or alarm us, but it is a reality that if we're giving our kids that at a young age, even just because that's what calms them down, or we might be creating and forming kind of a brain wave that tells them that's their, even though it's hyping up their anxiety, that's what's calming them down.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you got to get used to it. And it is good for a child to learn how to self-soothe themselves, to think of it, for them to turn to God eventually, right? As they get older, God, help me, I'm sad, versus, oh, let me just grab my iPad because this is kind of what I'm trained to do. And you're right, the brain will do that.
Yeah, I know my son gets tired of hearing me say it, but there was this fabulous quote that it's not until a child reaches the point of boredom that they're ready to be brilliant and creative. So I'm like, oh, it's so awesome. You're bored. You're just about to be brilliant and creative. And he's like, Mom, I know. But those are the times. I know. So yeah, just battling through the boredom, I tell you.
Yeah, I even roll my eyes at that one sometimes because I don't like being bored either. But it's good. It's good. No, but I am thinking as our kids do get to school age, they're integrating the screens even in their classrooms at school. So they may have them not all the time, but off and on all day. And then they come home and then we give them screen time at home. So what are some of the clues that our kids may be having, that screens may be having a negative effect on them emotionally, spiritually, physically, and how do we combat that?
Yeah. So you can see, like, if you have a pretty much a happy child or like kind of a stable child, and then all of a sudden you see like, wow, they're so moody or irritable or annoyed. You could kind of see like, well, what are they doing on screens? And it's very likely that they've even either started like something new on their screen, or they're doing something, it's longer or something like that. So just changes in behaviors. Things that they love, like let's say they love going outside and riding their bike, and they love soccer or they love drawing, and you see that your child really likes this. If you see, like, notice, hey, you haven't like played soccer for a long time, what's going on? And you might see that there's a screen behind that. So the when they cease doing activities that they like, obviously things like sleep, are they getting enough sleep? Because if they're not getting enough sleep because they're playing their game or they're thinking about their game, that's going to roll into the next day and kind of be this really ugly snowball kind of thing that they have. What are they thinking about? The preoccupation. My daughter Lucy, she had this thing. We did this documentary during COVID while we were all trapped at home, and I asked the kids, like, what's it like not having video games, etc. And she, as a 6th grader, it was really funny. She said, I can tell that the boys in my class, when they're sitting in class, they're not there. They are thinking about their video games. They're talking about their video games. They're talking to each other about what they're going to play. That they're like really consumed with, like, she didn't use the word consume, but she said basically they think about it all the time. So I think if you notice your child, wow, you are thinking about this a lot. Like, how is this picture going to look on Instagram? Or where can I go to shoot this? Or when am I going to get to play my video game again? Those are all warning signs that it is becoming too big in their life. And truly, think of technology. It's there to amuse us. It's there to gratify us, to give us a sense of purpose because we're like getting better at something. And how does this correspond spiritually? If we're used to texting something and like we get an answer right back, but then we pray to God and God doesn't answer us in the way we want, maybe for like 5 years, like a child is going to conclude, well, this God thing must not be good, like people say, because he does not answer. So we just have to understand, like, wow, this is really framing like, oh, church now has to be amusing. The Bible has to be amusing. The Bible has to be highly entertaining for me to interact with it, because that's what I'm used to. And that's when, Joanna's thing of boredom, if they're used to being bored and they hear something and they read something, they think, wow, that's really interesting. right?
Oh, yeah.
Versus, oh, I've been amused all this time. Doesn't this Bible thing have something more exciting than these words on a page? So it does affect and our kids spiritually, and I think that's a lot of the why we would want to parent a little differently.
Sure. Yeah. One thing that came to mind with that is you mentioned the video games is in our son and his social life, because asking when can I see my friend versus when can I play my game with my friend, those are two really different questions. And when the second question floats to the top more often, we know, we really got to pull this back. So and if there's anything that we figured out while parenting 5 kids, it's just that kids don't love limits, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you set a boundary, they're going to push against it, especially at first. I appreciate what you said about the family who gave it 4 months. I mean, it can be hard to hang tough for 4 months. So we were hoping that you could give us some guidance in how to communicate screen limits to our kids and how to follow through on them, because that can be the tough part.
Yeah. I think keep it simple and doable enough. So if you start with something like huge that you kind of know yourself, this is not going to work. That's probably not the way to start. For you, maybe to have that goal in mind, but maybe the beginning is, hey, buddy, let's do a challenge where you go 3 days playing a game, but then you go 3 days not playing a game, whatever it is. So just kind of think like what would be a doable thing. So both you as a parent feel like, hey, we're getting some traction on this. And then you can add something else, and then you can add something else. And same thing with the child, that hopefully the child is also seeing like, oh, on those days I didn't play, I didn't fall apart. Like I was actually okay. Like this wasn't so awful. So setting something specific. So not just like, we're going to lessen our time, because, what does that mean? But, okay, we're going to, stop at 10 p.m. now. Maybe it's like 1 a.m. or something now. So we're going to stop at 10 p.m., whatever it is. So something specific that your child could repeat back to you that they understand, maybe something that you do together as a family. And if, I love Dr. Gary Chapman, who wrote The Screen Kids with me, and he'll talk about, you come in, child of mine, I love you. I care about you. I'm a little concerned because you haven't been sleeping very well. And it's my job as a parent to help you. So I'm really sorry because have an apology. Like, don't be afraid to apologize. It's not a sign of weakness. It's good that you say, I'm really sorry. I've kind of let this thing go because honestly, I haven't wanted to fight you and I just didn't want to make you mad, but I'm realizing that it's my responsibility. So I'm sorry. I've kind of like failed you in this and I've let go, and I know it's not going to make you happy, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be collecting your phone at 11 o'clock at night and putting it under my pillow so that you can't get to it, whatever it is. But that spirit of, I'm doing this because I'm on your team. I'm sorry for whatever I have done to add to this problem. And hey, together, we're going to figure this out. And the humility of saying, I've never had a 17-year-old in this situation before. I'm not going to do this perfectly, but for me to not do anything, that's not helping you. My job is to try. So I'm going to try. And we're going to keep at this until we get better. And I think if your child knows, like, they might not be happy with that new rule, but they know, like, my parent loves me, they're going to be able to handle things like that and make celebrations like, hey, we did it. We're going to go to our favorite pizza place. Hey, we did it. Let's save up and let's go to an amusement park at the end of the year. If you can do this all semester, like have those celebrations and be in it together.
That's phenomenal. So we've been talking about the first S. Now I want to talk about tackle the other big S, and that's social media. What makes social media different from the other ways, we're engaging online,
Yes.
and what guidance can we recommend or allow our kids to hold with their social media accounts?
Yeah. So many things we could say here. So for instance, when you and I used to go to school, we would go to school and then like in the halls, we would, try to talk to our friends, try to look cute, do all these things. And then we'd go home and just be ourselves and relax, so we weren't like on. But with social media, what happens is kids are on all the time and they're trying to project whatever it is that they think is acceptable, right? Just in the same way that you fit in, you're like, oh, I want to wear the right shoes, or I want to make sure I don't have the wrong jacket on, that same feeling we had when we went to school. Well, now in social media, it's not just school time that this happens. It's 24 hours every single day, where a child who is on social media, well, of course you care what your friends think of you. Of course you care if people follow you or if they don't follow you. I mean, we care about these things, both girls and boys, and especially girls. And when we look at there's a survey done in 2022 that 60% of girls, teen girls, have extreme sadness and hopelessness, and 25% of them are suicidal. Why? Because all day long, they're in this hallway of trying to look their best, show their best, be their best. And it might not even be who they are. It's just who they think that people want them to be. So it's just this horrible mix of a child in their teenage years trying to form their identity and to be liked, and to try to put that against social media and be this thing that is so unreasonable. So it's super damaging, because what it does is it gives this unrealistic expectation that no one can meet. So you feel this sense of failure, or you are like top dog and you feel really good and you have this, you're swelled up with pride, either way, it's not good. It's pride or despair. And it's kind of survival of the fittest instead of, hey, let's learn how to care for each other. You can do that on social media. You can reach out and care for people for sure, but it's not what the platform is geared for. The platform is geared to make you angry, to compare. They did a thing for TikTok. So TikTok is from China. This will make your listeners really mad. So in China, the TikTok is called Douyin, and it's educational in nature. They put Rubik's cubes and drawing, and it shuts off after 90 minutes. That's what they do, what China does for their own youth. China pushes to the United States unlimited TikTok that promotes vandalizing your school bathroom, eating disorders, suicidal tendencies, drugs, trans. That's what they are promoting actively. And that's what our children are watching. The Wall Street Journal pretended to be a 13-year-old on TikTok, and they got 568 drug videos. Like, what? So we have to understand, this is not like cute. This is not cute at all. So there does need to be a sense of alarm that what are they consuming, and why is this unhealthy? And obviously, the last thing I'll say, think of it, social media. There's nothing social about your child sitting in a room by themselves and thinking that's the way to be social, that I cannot talk to someone in real life until I first reach out to them on the internet. That's not social, right? Social is two people, in a classroom, and they say, hey, what's your name? Hey, what's your name? Hey, oh, you love baseball? I love baseball. That is social. So we need to understand we got to get back to the old ways, or we're going to really be mentally unstable.
Yeah, it's good to remember just even what those things do to us, because I didn't grow up with a smartphone. I didn't grow up with social media.
Yeah.
And yet I still, when I go onto social media, I start feeling those things. I see everybody else on their happy families and on their vacations and in their warm places or with their nice home, or whatever.
Right.
And I start feeling those feelings. I see how, I didn't grow up with a smartphone, but yet I see how easily I can get addicted and drawn into it. And so, how much more for our kids who are growing up in this world and start at such a young age. We can see why it's important, I guess, as parents to really take how we navigate this with our families seriously.
And, Rob and I, as we engage with other families, it seems like everybody has landed in their own unique place when it comes to technology. I mean, we know families who don't even own a TV in the home, and some whose kids have a TV in their bedroom. And some families, from the parents on down, they have dumb phones, and some families give their kids smartphones while they're still in grade school. And so I think there is just such a variety of mindsets and approaches to this. Yeah. And then we were hoping that you could just speak to the couple who maybe came into their marriage with different expectations of how they were going to use technology, and maybe they're in conflict right now with the boundaries that they're setting with their kids. So could you kind of give some encouragement for how couples can come together on that?
Yeah, that certainly can be a place of conflict. And I think just to frame it, in the sense of, there's always going to be conflict in marriage, whether it's about phones or should they go to Christian school, public school, homeschool? Should we require vegetables? Should we not require vegetables? So just take out the sting of the technology. Like it's so different. No, we've kind of argued about things and had different opinions about things for a long time. So just see it like as another issue that you have to talk about. And then I think it's listening to one another. Well, why do you think we should allow that video game? And really listening. And okay, well, let me know, why do you think this would be like a bad thing for our child to use this video game? And really listening. And then maybe you wait a few days and you both chew on what the other person said, and then schedule a time where, okay, let's meet on Wednesday to visit this again. And then you visit it again, and maybe one of you has come around to the other, or maybe you decide like, well, why don't we give it a trial run? So it's kind of like anything of seeing, getting the realization we both want the best thing for our child. Let's first start from there and agree with that. And then let's take out, like I want to win, and that let's take that out, and let's just listen. And maybe put it on paper. And however the couple is wired, right? Somebody's going to make a huge spreadsheet and somebody's going to just talk about it, whatever. So however you're wired to talk about this, and then come to your decision. And, sometimes you might come to a decision and it didn't work out well. So then realize, okay, if this didn't work out well, let's give this a month. And then maybe we'll try my way if this way doesn't work. So just come with a spirit of cooperation and be willing to listen to the other person.
Great advice. You had mentioned also your title on technology or grandparenting
screen kids. Yeah.
There we go. What's a word of advice you'd give to grandparents who want to navigate their screen time with their grandkids well?
Yeah, I would say learn about it. So whether it's grandparenting screen kids or another book, or watch a video or a podcast, something to just learn about it. So because it is going to be something so big in your grandchild's world. And then for you to realize that it's a huge gift as a grandparent if you can be that offline time in their life. So don't feel apologetic about, well, these are Nana's rules, that you leave your phone at the door and that we just talk to each other, or you grab a book, or you help me bake, or you help me do my errands. Those are really, really good things. So I think that kids today are missing a lot of the normal things, like learning how to talk to the bank teller, or, who does that, right? We all go to ATM machines. Learning, these old fashioned things of, how do you know, like, which is a good apple? All these things, these are things grandparents can do with their grandkids of, hey, come help me do this. And I'm going to teach you how to fill in the blank. I think those can be really wonderful ways for grandparents, not only to get their errands done, but for grandparents to involve their kids in something that is outside of the screen world. It's a gift that grandparents can give. And of course, hot chocolate chip cookies and stories with grandma and grandpa, all those things are very special. And so the more you can keep tech out of your relationship, the better. And the more you can establish your own house, like, okay, well, at your house, you might do that. But at my house, when you're here, we do this. And, I think you have to have that belief that your grandchildren will adapt. They might not like it at first, but eventually they will adapt and catch on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you're just making me think of how cute it is. My mother and my daughter communicate with technology by texting each other, but they text each other to set up when they're going to practice quilting. So
that's adorable. That is like,
kind of the best
that
of both.
That is the sweetest. Exactly. And that's when technology is best used, like to figure out how are we going to coordinate these real life activities. That's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's really sweet. But I have a feeling that there's probably couples listening today who are feeling discouraged because it seems like technology has just been the runaway train in their home, and they're really unsure of the next steps to take, or they feel like maybe they're seeing some really troubling fruit going on in their child's life from the impact of technology. And we were just hoping that you could pray over us and pray over the families listening who really want to walk in wisdom with the Lord in setting the boundaries around their home. Could you do that for us?
Of course.
Thank you.
Lord, we just want to thank you for every person who is listening. You have brought them here for a reason. We give you our children, our grandchildren. We give you our own screen time. Lord, we ask that you would give us wisdom. Lord, we know that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Help us not to fear man and what others would think if we did something strange with our technology or we allowed a technology, whatever it is. But help us, Lord, to think of you, to fear you above all else. And we just ask, Lord, if our home, we just don't know, Lord, where to start. Would you drop in our heart right now a place where we can start? The dinner table or the bedroom at night, or by going out to ice cream without any technology, whatever it is, Lord, show us a starting place. Help us to connect with our children and our grandchildren in a meaningful way. Help us, Lord, not to have the idol of technology in our homes. Help us to honor you with the way we use it. And we just ask, Lord, that our children and our grandchildren would do the same. Give us a heart of wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And, it really is just a great resource. It's very practical. You and Gary did a great job of having a tone that's encouraging, uplifting. It gives us, some of the warning signs, but and it's not overwhelming. When I hear technology, I'm thinking a bit, but it's a less than 200-page book of just great content. So I appreciate you producing these for us. And if people want to go online and find out other things that you have available and get these resources, where can they go?
Yes, the book is called Screen Kids, and my website is just my name, arlenepelican.com. And you can also look at happyhomeuniversity.com. That's where I have that little movie about the kids. It's called Screen Kids in Their Own Words, about them talking about their use of technology.
Oh, I can't wait to show that to our son. That'll be fantastic.
That will be fun. He'll be like, why are you showing me this?
Oh, well, we're just so grateful that you shared your time with us today and all these wonderful insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my joy.
Yeah. And thank you, friends, for joining us for the Growing Home Together podcast. Rob and I would be thrilled to connect with you over on our website at growinghometogether.com. We've put together a whole array of resources for you to help you pray for your kids, to pray as a couple, to get in God's word, and even to have some fun and make memories together. At Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family.
And growing home together with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growing Home Together podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found some valuable insights to help you care for the soul of your family. Remember to check out growinghometogether.com for more resources, and stay tuned for our next episode coming your way soon.